From the streets of Barcelona and the Medinas of Tangier and Cairo to the edges of the Arabian desert, from the bayous of the Gulf Coast to the glass towers of tomorrow across the global south, Citizen One explores the spaces where humanity, technology, and design collide. Hosted by Douglas Stuart McDaniel, urbanist, futurist, and storyteller, this series travels beyond the headlines to ask a single question: what kind of world are we really building? Some are already hailing him as the Anthony Bourdain of urbanism and futurism, a guide who moves through cities not as destinations, but as living experiments in resilience and civic imagination.
If cities are our greatest invention, why do we keep designing them like we'll never have to live there?
For more than 30 years, Doug has worked at the crossroads of history and innovation, moving through the corporate empires of nuclear power, space technology, civil infrastructure, and cities of the future. Join Doug and his guests, architects, artists, engineers, and dreamers, as they uncover the systems shaping our shared future. This is Citizen One, a journey through the architectures of systems, design, and our shared humanity. A journey into what's next. Stay curious. Stay human. Stay one. Today's episode, titled Go Home, Rural Urbanism Between Storms, Saints and Sinners, explores the distinction between engineered and vernacular resilience on the US Gulf Coast.
Welcome back to Citizen One, exploring our urban future, an UrbanNext original podcast series. I'm your host, Douglas Stuart McDaniel. It was a Saturday in late October, one of those fieldwork days we've all done before, part tradition, part metabolism reset, muffulettas, and jambalaya, at Radosta's Po' Boys in Old Metairie, Louisiana, where the LSU game was playing on every screen and the regulars were yelling at the refs like Pentecostals at Sunday church. It's been there since the late 70s, maybe earlier, family-run, stubbornly local, the kind of place that smells like fried shrimp, fryer oil, and loyalty. The muffulettas came out hot, pressed. The provolone melted just enough to fuse the salami and mortadella into one glorious cholesterol pact. The olive salad dripped onto the butcher paper like it was part of the ritual. The jambalaya on the side, chicken, sausage, and a level of spice that warned you but didn't apologize, was the kind of thing that made you question every chain restaurant's definition of flavor. Onion rings the size of your fist completed what we were calling breakfast, washed down with cold beer and shots of bumbu, a Caribbean and rum that tastes like Bananas Foster if Bananas Foster had a bad idea and followed through. Bobby, our friend and designated driver for the day, stuck with vanilla cream soda, sipping it like a man above the chaos. The bartender called him a saint for driving, which in Metairie carries theological weight. We'd started the morning strong and irresponsible. Next stop, chaos in Toul. Friends Maureen and Marie were already dressed like trouble, black and white and pink and green tutus, the kind of coordinated chaos that makes people look twice and then pretend they didn't. We decided to stop into this posh family-run jewelry store, the kind of place where the lighting costs more than most people's cars. The second we walked in, you could feel the air shift. You know that kind of hush where the staff tries to decide if you're buying or loitering? That. The woman behind the counter looked us over like we'd tracked in swamp water. Her smile was polite, but her posture said, security camera. Marie leaned on the glass case, grinning like she owned it. Maureen adjusted her tutu and asked, perfectly straight-faced, do y'all have anything in crushed oyster shell? For the record, Bobby and I were in tutus, only in spirit, not form, though we did allow the girls to liberally apply glittery unicorn snot to our faces and arms before we left the car. It caught the light just right when we walked in, subtle as a disco ball at a wake. That was the breaking point. One of the clerks choked back a laugh, and the tension cracked like bad veneer. Turns out they recognized Marie, a local legend in her own right, the kind of customer who comes in half for the merchandise and half for the mischief. The staff relaxed. Someone offered us champagne, like a peace treaty. Bobby muttered something about class warfare, but drank anyway. Suddenly, it was all dawling this, and, oh, it's so good to see you again, the same people who'd been ready to call the cops 2 minutes earlier. That's New Orleans for you. Class divides are flexible if you're funny, familiar, or tip well. By the time we left, the same clerks who'd side-eyed us were suddenly tripping over each other to open the door. Marie had collected the diamond earrings she'd had on order and picked out a gleaming F1 Tag Heuer from her favorite racing team for good measure, channeling Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, but with Gulf Coast attitude instead of rodeo drive polish. One saleswoman actually gasped when Marie handed over her card, the kind of moment that rewrites a room's entire hierarchy in real time. Meanwhile, Maureen was explaining the gravity-defying physics of tutus and tulle to a man in a linen suit who looked like he'd never been that close to glitter before. We walked out to the street, still laughing, a little champagne in our step, leaving behind the stunned quiet of a boutique that had just learned not to judge by sequins alone. The city, snobby or not, always finds a way to let you back in once it remembers who you are. After our stops in Old Metairie, we snaked our way deeper into the city, spinning our way through Tremé just to get lost and call it research, because Tremé is one of those places that still feels like New Orleans, talking to itself when no one's listening. It's the oldest black neighborhood in America, the cradle of second lines and brass bands, where Creole architecture and shotgun houses sit shoulder to shoulder like old cousins who've seen too much together. After Katrina, Tremé became the city's moral compass, a reminder that resilience here isn't branding, it's instinct. The HBO series Tremé tried to tell that story. Musicians, chefs, laborers, people rebuilding their lives one streetlight at a time. It never caught fire like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad, maybe because it was too real. No dragons, no meth empires, just rent past due and the brass section still showing up. It didn't romanticize the wreckage, it listened to it. Most shows sell redemption arcs. Tremé just handed you a trombone and said, play through it and dance through the wake. Driving those streets now, you still feel the pulse under the asphalt. The murals fade and get painted over. The houses keep getting jacked up a few more inches with every hurricane season. And the people, those who stayed, carry that quiet defiance that doesn't need a camera crew. By the time we crossed Esplanade and finally snagged a parking space along the Mississippi off Decatur Street, the day already felt twice as long and twice as alive. The quarter hummed ahead of us, the river breathing slow behind. Tremé receded in the rear view like a truth you don't want to forget, even if you can't explain it to anyone who wasn't there. At Café du Monde, powdered sugar was already on our shirts before the coffee even hit the table. We inhaled beignets like it was a competitive sport, then stumbled out into the quarter, half-sainted in sugar dust. Then the games really began as we proceeded to day drink around Jackson Square and the quarter. By the time we were ready to start thinking about heading back into Mississippi, everyone was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a long day and too many fried things. That's when Maureen woke up in the back seat and broke the silence. Y'all ever been to Harold and Lillian's? No one had. Never heard of it, I replied. Is it here in the quarter? Oh, hell no. It's on the way back. You can't drive back and not stop there. They'll revoke your Gulf Coast passport. That was that. When a local says detour, it's not a suggestion. Maureen had that look locals get when nostalgia crosses over into obligation. The kind of look that says, we're not just stopping by, we're gonna go pay our respects. We pulled in to pick up some drive-through banana daiquiris in Slidell, the kind that come in styrofoam cups with a red straw and the moral ambiguity of an open container. They were cold, slushy, diesel sweet, somewhere between a milkshake and a misdemeanor. That's part of the charm down here. Louisiana perfected the fine art of legal sin. You can order alcohol through a drive-through window and still get a receipt that says, "Have a blessed day." Bobby followed Maureen's directions off the main drag and over to Highway 90. Leaving the city felt like stepping out of a soundtrack. From those tight New Orleans blocks to the open wetlands ahead, resilience just changes form, from brass bands to blast stands. The brass faded. The humidity stayed while the turns and the roads got smaller and smaller, the GPS lagging like it didn't want to be responsible for whatever bad decisions we had left in us. Crossing the Pearl River feels like changing channels, Louisiana's joyful corruption fading into Mississippi's stoic melancholy. The landscape goes from neon to sepia in a single bridge span, wide, flat, undecided about land or water. The wetlands around Stennis Space Center stretched out like a slow-motion map of erosion and endurance. Cypress knees poked up through black water, egrets lifted off like stray thoughts, and the horizon ran out of excuses. Somewhere beyond the tree line, NASA keeps its secrets, massive concrete test stands built to hold rockets steady while they scream. You can't see them from the highway, but you can feel them. They're the only skyscrapers for 50 miles, buried in swamp instead of skyline. Every time America dreams of leaving Earth, it starts here, in the mud. Apollo, Shuttle, Artemis, every launch had its first heartbeat in this marsh. When Hurricane Camille, 1969, and Katrina, 2005, hit, Stennis was right in the strike zone, yet it withstood both, partly because the facility was built high, hardened, and ringed by marsh that absorbed the surge. The surrounding land functions like a natural moat. The test stands themselves, those steel and concrete monoliths where they fire the engines, are bolted into bedrock and designed to handle explosions, so a hurricane barely ruffles them. Power and communications are redundant, and during major storms, the site becomes a kind of inland fortress. It shuts down, rides it out, then reopens as one of the first signs of recovery for Hancock County. In short, Stennis tests rockets by design and resilience by accident. It's a place built to survive explosions. Hurricanes are just another test protocol. Stennis is a paradox wrapped in humidity, a spaceport built inside a floodplain, a monument to progress surrounded by water that keeps taking the land inch by inch. The marsh turned out to be the best engineer NASA ever hired. The same wetlands that erase roads and swallow fishing shacks absorbed the storm surge and held the line. The concrete towers never flinched. That's the thing about the Gulf. It doesn't believe in permanence, only adaptation. It's the clearest case study in two kinds of resilience, engineered and vernacular. Stennis stands for the first, blueprints, redundancies, and reinforced concrete built to survive on command. Harold and Lillian's is the second, held together by plywood, humor, and habit. One measures in PSI, the other in people. Both work, just for different missions. Out here, urbanism isn't about skyscrapers or zoning maps. It's about learning how to rebuild the same place over and over and still call it home. Stennis just does it with better funding. As we drove past, I kept thinking about the contrast. Humans testing engines to escape gravity while the ground beneath them keeps disappearing. Innovation built on erosion. It's both tragic and brilliant, a living metaphor for the South's version of progress. Build high, brace for impact, and when it falls, build again. Maybe that's the real Southern paradox. Every dream here is built on borrowed ground. Whether it's NASA's launch pads or someone's back porch, the goal's the same. Hold fast, fire up, and pray the foundation lasts through the next season. The wetlands don't care about our ambitions, but they keep us honest. Every launch and every hurricane is part of the same test program, proof that what we create can survive what we've destroyed. You can see the ghosts of 1,000 failed subdivisions, culverts to nowhere, utility poles without wires, street signs marking roads the marsh has already repossessed. This is the rural fringe of modern urbanism, where infrastructure meets entropy and shrugs. Out here, the word city doesn't mean skyscrapers. It means the next gas station that's still open after dark. Every few miles, there's a crab trap, half submerged in a ditch, a bait bucket turn planter, or a boarded-up fireworks stand promising a reopening that'll never come. The air smells like salt, diesel, and gumbo base, the holy trinity of coastal metabolism. Bobby kept glancing at the rearview mirror like he expected the road to disappear behind us. It almost did. The marsh doesn't give back what it takes. It just absorbs. Maureen sat forward, narrating landmarks that weren't there anymore. Used to be a bait shop there, she said, pointing to a patch of cattails. Used to be a bridge there, too. Storm took it. And then, like a mirage stitched together from stubbornness and neon, the sign appeared, Harold and Lillian's Bar. Here it is, the coldest beer on the coast. A porch leaned toward the gravel lot, half the railing welded into the letters HL, like initials carved into a marriage that somehow survived every storm. Inside smelled like beer, bleach, and wood that's seen things. The walls were crowded with Saints gear, old photos, and a hand-lettered fireball sign that looked older than some of the bottles. A stainless steel dance pole in the middle of the room hinted at late-night dares rather than performances. Locals leaned over the bar with the slouch of people who've earned it. Maureen nodded like she was home. The bartender poured out beers and shots before we spoke. PBRs and Jaeger, because of course, and asked where we were from. Ocean Springs, I said. Then you're practically family, she grinned. That's the way it goes here. Geography is kinship. If you've been through Camille, Katrina, or Zeta, even from a distance, you're in the club. The bar itself is proof of it. Built in 1946, a dive bar nearly 80 years old. Knocked flat more times than anyone can count, always rebuilt. Camille tore off its roof in '69. Katrina drowned it. Zeta tried to finish the job, but Harold and Lillian's just hammered the porch back together, duct taped the jukebox, and kept pouring. Every storm strips the coast down to its bones, and yet these places return like tide markers. That's what I've come to call rural urbanism. Not city planning in the traditional sense, but social infrastructure held together by habit, humor, and a cooler full of beer. When the smart city evangelists talk about resilient systems, they should spend a week here. This is the model. No renderings, no policy brief, just survival with a drawl. You can chart the whole post-Camille to Katrina to Zeta era in how this place has evolved. The walls are thicker, the porch higher, the sign repainted, but never rebranded. The architecture learns like a living thing. No consultants, just people with hammers, faith, and time. Maureen leaned in and told us her granddad used to drink here after Camille, said it was the only thing in Claremont Harbor that made it through the storm with its dignity intact. Then she added, though dignity's not what people come here for. We laughed, but then she went quiet, tracing a name carved into the massive cypress bar top, a slab of wood grown right here on the property. I didn't want to bring it up, but I had to mention the thing everyone in Hancock County already knew. The 2024 shooting, when a fight spilled over and a bystander was killed. It was one of those senseless moments that could have erased a place like this, but it didn't. The regulars grieved, raised money, fixed the wall, and came back. They always do. Down here, grief gets folded into the structure. It's not ignored. It's absorbed, like salt in wood. Maureen took a slow sip and said, yeah, that's part of it. Murder bars, too. Every place down here's got ghosts. You just gotta make room. Then she asked the bartender something that caught me off guard. Where's Go Home? The bartender froze for a second, then her face softened. Oh, baby. Go Home crossed the Rainbow Bridge 3 years ago. Go Home, as it turns out, wasn't a local drunk or an old regular. He was a Newfoundland or some big dog, a massive, drooling barroom mascot who used to sleep under the pool table like a black bear rug. He'd belonged to the previous owners and was famous up and down the coast for escorting patrons to their trucks when they'd had too much. If you told him, go home, he'd walk you to your car, sit down and stare until you drove off. That's how he got his name. In a region where everything washes away eventually, it figured that the most dependable soul was a dog who refused to leave the porch. When Hurricane Zeta hit, the story goes, Go Home refused to leave the bar until the water rose to his chest. They found him later on the road, soaked and shivering but alive. He lived a few more years after that, everyone's dog, no one's dog, and when he finally died, they buried him just down the road. The bartender pointed with her chin toward the tree line. There's a little cross out there. Locals still drop off treats. Maureen's eyes went wide. I didn't know he passed, she said, half smiling. At least I can visit him now. And that's what she did. After we finished our beers, she walked down the ditch side shoulder until the lights started to fade. The rest of us stayed on the porch, watching banana leaves shake in the evening breeze. Someone played Family Tradition on the jukebox inside, and the laughter rolled out like thunder from a familiar storm. There's something about this stretch of coast that keeps its priorities simple. It doesn't chase progress, it survives it. Every storm relevels the hierarchy. When the casinos flood and the neon dies, the locals just shrug because they've always had candles. But Harold and Lillian's always finds its way back, tinsel and all. Driving east again, past Bay St. Louis and past Christian, the docks of Gulfport and the casinos of Biloxi, and over the last bridge into Ocean Springs, I kept thinking about Maureen and her fond memories of Go Home. Not the dog so much as the phrase, what it means here. Down this road, home isn't a house. It's whatever still stands when the storm's gone. Sometimes it's a bar. Sometimes it's the friends who drag you there when you're too tired to know you need it. That's the continuum. Engineered resilience keeps the launch pad standing. Vernacular resilience keeps the porch lights burning. It would be easy for a place like Harold and Lillian's to lean hard into nostalgia, but it doesn't. It's the roadhouse version of resilience. Part refuge, part rumor mill, part civic institution with a jukebox. When the grid goes down, this is where the lights last the longest. Candlelight, a jukebox, and a cold beer. That evening, back in Ocean Springs, we ended the day the only way that made sense, at the Julep Room, tucked beneath the old Aunt Jenny's catfish parlor, an antebellum home built around 1852 and perched above the bluff like it's been eavesdropping on the Gulf for a century and a half. If you blink, you'll miss the sign, but locals know the slope past Gill's Fish Camp where you cut under the Fort Bayou drawbridge and up the other side to reveal the stairs that drop into the basement bar. Once a Prohibition-era speakeasy, later a musician's haunt, it's where Gulf Coast ghosts come to drink with the living. The walls sweat history. Elvis is said to have played here in '55, back when the jukebox was new and the laws were more suggestion than rule. These days, the crowd's a mix of off-duty chefs, boat mechanics, and night owls who prefer their conversations dim and their drinks honest. We grabbed some seats at the bar beneath the low beam ceiling, the air thick with old bourbon and salt. Someone was tuning a guitar near the stage, chasing a sound halfway between country and confession. The bartender poured us what we didn't know we needed, one last round to close the loop on a long day that started with glitter and ended in gravity. As the sky outside turned purple over the Gulf, Maureen looked at the map of the beach road we had just traveled and finally broke the quiet. I need to go back and see Go Home this week, she said. Some proper respect. I know he's still watching over the place. No one replied. We didn't need to. In this part of the coast, some truths don't ask for agreement. They just sit there beside you like another drink on the table. Thank you again for listening to this episode of Citizen One. I hope to see you again soon.
This has been another episode of Citizen One, exploring our urban future, an UrbanNext original podcast series. Thanks for joining, and make sure to subscribe to the Citizen One podcast to stay tuned for Doug's debut novel, Ashes of Empire, Ghost Emperor, a powerful epic saga that captures how empires fall, but myths don't. In Ghost Emperor, Douglas Stuart McDaniel reimagines the aftermath of Alexander the Great's death during the succession wars of the Diadochi, a world where his old generals seek to become gods, maps become weapons, and history itself begins to fracture. The story moves like a fever dream across deserts and palaces, exploring the cost of ambition and the haunting afterlife of empire.